Hello, this is Karen Hudis. Eva Sebastian has asked me to speak to the people in Hungary, and she's promised to translate some of this for those of you who don't speak English. I have to tell you that I feel very close to Hungary. My fencing coach, Bela Deseagi, was from Hungary, and I'm a lawyer who worked in the legal department of the World Bank for 20 years, and I'm also an economist. And I've been working together with a very famous Hungarian economist who's one of the foremost experts in monetary economics. And he's asked me to try to warn people about how important it is to pay very close attention to gold, which is real currency. That's antal fekete. And also there is a very famous Hungarian economist named Silvio Giselle. I'm sure I'm pronouncing this incorrectly. And Silvio said that local currency was very, very important, that you can have full employment. What we have right now at the current time is Hungary is one of those countries which has escaped from the central bankers at the Bank for International Settlements. And this group, many of the private banks that consider themselves to be central banks and to have the right to provide currency to 60 different countries, including the United States. It turns out these central banks are owned by a group, a single group, and they're dominated by the Jesuits. They didn't want you to know about this, but 3 mathematicians at the Federal Institute of Technology have done an analysis, a simulation of who owns the 43,000 transnational companies whose stock is traded on the world's capital markets. It turns out that there is a single group. They call it the network of control. They're the banking cartel. Many people think that there are 10 separate banks like Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Citibank, Deutsche Bank. It turns out that all of these institutions are controlled by that single network of control, that banking cartel. And they didn't want people to know about it, but we do know about it. Now, I hadn't realized that this group existed, but I did, in the time that I was at the World Bank, discover a lot of corruption, and I was doing my job as a lawyer inside the World Bank and started reporting this corruption. What I first saw was in the end of the 1990s. I was working in the Philippines, and the second largest bank under a World Bank project was supposed to be sold. It was supposed to be privatized, and this didn't happen. It didn't happen because the president of the Philippines at the time, Joseph Estrada, he thought he was allowed to do whatever he wanted to do, and he was gambling with Lucio Tan, who owned a borrower, the Philippine Airlines. And so what happened in the end was that Joseph Estrada was sent to jail. I protested because it turned out that there was a lot of corruption going on, and I warned the man who was in charge of the World Bank lending program that that they were breaking the securities laws and that the World Bank could not disperse its loans. So we ended up canceling $400 million, and the Japanese canceled $400 million. And then the people who had their money on deposit in Philippine National Bank, there was a run on the bank, and the government had to bail out the bank for $500 million. The World Bank Evaluation Department said, well, this couldn't be foreseen, and I said, of course it could. I was warning the man who was in charge of the World Bank lending program. So they started to punish me. I didn't like this, so I went to the Treasury Department, and one of the things I did, and this is the good news, it turns out that there's a very accurate political science modeling tool. It's called a power transition model. The economist and politician who invented this analysis was working with the U.S. Department of Defense. It's very accurate. It's like 90 to 95% accurate. And this model predicted that a coalition would form to end the corruption. I thought it was just inside the World Bank. I found out after I was fired illegally in 2007 that the corruption was actually world corruption. But I kept going because at that point I was working together with whistleblowers inside the World Bank, outside the World Bank. At this point we have a coalition of countries that are working together to end this corruption. And I can tell you, you can see a lot of the effects of this coalition. For example, the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are no longer trading international trade denominated in dollars. So this means that the United States dollar, the fiat dollar that is about to crash. So are the rest of the paper currencies, and this is what Antal Fekete is telling the world. He's been warning everybody that paper currencies always crash. In the meantime, one of the people that I'm working with now is a man, a German lawyer and banker who is living in the Philippines, and he has the legal signature authority over the world's gold that has been in hiding. There's 170,500 metric tons of gold on deposit in the Bank of Hawaii, and this is available to support dollars which would be issued by the Treasury Department. And Eva had asked me to discuss with you some of the secret illegal shenanigans that these bankers are doing. They've been actually cooperating with lawyers through the years. In 1871, there was a secret second constitution that was written. Many people in the United States didn't know about it, but when people go to Congress to represent the citizens who have elected them, the people in Congress find out that they're managers of a corporation that was incorporated in the District of Columbia. And Eva had showed me, and I think she's going to put this link up on her website to show you how the government in Hungary has also been incorporated and acts like a corporation. It turns out that when the United States citizens pay their taxes, the money is going to the City of London, and then it's being forwarded, about 60% of it, to the Jesuits in the Vatican, which is not a good arrangement, obviously. They're doing this in secrecy, but the secret is ending. There's a saying, I don't know whether they say it also in Hungarian, that is, the cat is out of the bag. And so we're not going to permit this to happen. I have just a couple of days ago put some documents up on my Facebook page, which I've also forwarded to Eva. And this shows that when the world's gold was put under the cloak of secrecy in hiding in these banks, actually first it was buried in the Philippines. That was by General Yamashita, who was actually a nephew of, well, Queen Victoria was the sister of a twin who ended up in the Philippines. That was Prince Talano, who went around the world siring illegitimate children, and one of his children happened to be General Yamashita, who then went around collecting the world's gold, which was hidden in the Philippines, and then it was dug up and deposited in various banks all over the world. Anyway, what's going to happen now is that when the gold was collected, in some cases the central banks issued, the Federal Reserve issued bonds, and so we are going to offset the face amount of these bonds against the debt that the Americans owe on their debt. It's about, I believe the face amount of the bonds is $210 trillion worth. And of course these bonds were issued back in the 1930s. So there's quite a bit of compounded interest that has accrued in the interim. I think it's in the quadrillions of dollars. So we're going to have a different economic arrangement. And what's going on in Hungary, although you have managed to extricate yourself from the IMF central bank arrangement. You're still, I understand from Ava, struggling because there's a lot of these crooks. They think that they have a right to continue to exploit people, and your debt that's been denominated in your Hungarian currency has to be repaid in foreign exchange, which is extremely expensive. So we're going to have quite a bit of sorting out to do. I hope to stay in touch with you all as all of the citizens of the world work together to take back our world from this banking cartel, which is no longer going to operate, as I've mentioned. So, and if you have any questions, you can contact me through my website, which is KAHUDES.net. So I'm very glad to be in touch with you. I want to thank Ava for asking me to make this brief video. And yes, let's all hold hands and work together to clean up our world. And there will be transparency in doing this. We're going to have to stay involved and work together to make things the way we want them. Thanks again, and take care. Goodbye.